Hi, this is Gary with Aldan American. Today we're going to be doing an installation on this 2017 Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck. And it belongs to Enrique, and it's a friend of ours. We've known the truck for a while. A couple of years ago, he sent it out and he had somebody do an installation of a bolt-on flip kit and drop spindle shock spring combination on the truck. He says the car drives okay, but he's never felt that it's great. So we were talking about it and he said, you know, let's look at putting the Aldan kit on the truck. So when we install this kit on this truck, what we're expecting to see is a little bit more adjustability from the fixed length springs, also the dampening adjustment so we can dial the ride quality and handling in on it much better. And I think it's going to be a huge improvement over the inexpensive eBay drop kit that he's got on the truck now. So as you can see, looking at this truck, he's made a huge amount of improvements on it. Really fixed it up, looks great, awesome wheels, awesome stance. It's just a really nice truck all the way around. I think with just the drivability improvements, he's finally gonna hit the home run he's been driving for. So the first thing we wanna do before we get started is we wanna measure all four corners and record the measurements. The reason is if we're changing the ride height, we want to know where we started off from. We want to also see if the truck was straight and square and level before we started. A lot of times if you're lowering a car and the car is crooked at stock ride height, even though the car comes down evenly to the new lowered ride height, it's now more noticeable if the car is not level. So this truck has already been lowered and we're trying to match the ride height that it is. And we can see it's at 30 1/2 inches to the fender lip. So that's what we're going to try to achieve when we're done. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the fender liner out so I can get to my upper bolts and nuts. Makes it a lot easier to work on it. As you can see, this has a set of tubular dropped A-arms, and it looks like it has the stock spring with a set of aftermarket shocks of some sort. I'm not sure what they are. I've never heard of the brand. So the front removal is pretty simple. There's 3 nuts on the top, and then on the bottom there's the 2 bolts for the T-bar. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna drop the A-arms, so they'll just basically come down and we'll be able to pull the shock right out. With the drop control arms in here, I cannot get the shock out like a stock vehicle without the dropped arms. The shock can come right out the top. I'm gonna have to pop the ball joint so I can get the lower to go down some more. So the Aldan American shock has got bearings top and bottom, and we use the misalignment spacers to take up the distance between the bearing and the upper bracket. So the upper bracket is going to bolt on just like the original shock did, and it's going to sit right on top of the Aldan American coilover like that. And then the lower bracket, this bracket is designed to work with the stock lower control arm. On these tubular control arms we're working with, we didn't really need this style bracket. We could have done a T-bar, but we really like using this bracket. And this bracket's gonna work perfect with the lower control arms that are on here. So now that we have our shock installed, we're gonna torque our 3/8 hardware to 35 foot-pounds. The lower and the upper shock bolts are a little difficult because of the bracket and how it is, but normally a 1/2 inch bolt we would torque to 75 foot-pounds. On my rebound adjuster on the top, what I'm gonna do is go full counterclockwise, which is the softest position. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put 3 clicks of rebound in. That's a great place to start. Go out, drive it, see how it feels, how it's working. And if you need to make any changes from there, it's just as easy as turning the knob to soften or stiffen the shock. We're gonna move on to the back, but one of the things we have to always check out is shock lengths on a lowered truck. This particular truck has a C-notch that's been done, so it has a shorter shock. There's no shock extension here. So what I had to do was measure this shock and come up with a shorter shock to fit in this application. That is something we want to make right, because if the shock is too long, it'll bottom out and you're going to have poor ride quality. Likewise, if the shock is too short, it can top out. So we need to make sure that on a lowered truck, we want to measure the shock at ride height for length, bolt center to bolt center. And then we can determine the correct length shock. And when we're determining the correct length shock, what I want to do is have the shock compressed by about 30% of its travel at ride height. That way you have 2/3 of your travel for compression, 1/3 of your travel for extension. As you can see, these are the 3 different length shocks. This is the OEM length shock, and as you can see, it's quite a bit longer than the lowered lengths. And if you ran this shock, more likely than not, it would bottom out and cause a lot of problems. Having the correct length shock with the correct travel is going to make the rear of the car work correctly. Our shocks are produced with the correct bushing and sleeve combination that's an 1 11/16 for this truck. The shocks that were on here before were narrower, so these tabs have been squished in. So what I do is I take a threaded bolt and 2 nuts and I spread this apart. It's a lot more sanitary than taking a hammer and just starting to beat on it. So like on our front shock, I like to start off at 3 clicks. So I'm going to go full counterclockwise, then 3 clicks. And that's going to be my starting point. Now that I've completed the installation on my rear shocks, I can't wait to go out and drive it. For more information on Aldan American products, check us out at aldanamerican.com.